Hi Woodland families, this is Miss Israel. I'm so happy to be a part of this project, something very, very special to me. Some of you may not know, but might be able to tell by my sweatshirt that I love our military. A little biased to the Air Force, but I love all branches, and here's the reason why. First of all, my grandfather served in the Army during World War II. Heard many, many, many stories. And then I was fortunate enough to marry an active duty Air Force enlisted man. He was, in the Air Force for 20 and a half years. We raised our family, being an Air Force family. We've lived in Nebraska and overseas in Aviano, Italy, and here, and it was just a wonderful experience for all of us. True, my husband was the one that stood up and took the oath and said he would serve his country, but our kids and I served right along with him. It takes a lot of support, a lot of sacrifice on both ends, and there's nothing more that makes me prouder to be a military spouse. And so being a part of this project excites me because we get to build the bridge between Woodland Elementary and our military community. We all live in Oak Ridge, and this makes it special. Because Oak Ridge itself began as a military community in many, many ways. It was built by the United States Army back in 1942. It has shared in a mission of service to our great nation from the very beginning. What better time than Veterans Day to acknowledge so many in our own Woodland Elementary family who have answered that call. A handful of our students asked family and friends to come into school and sit for an interview to tell us their stories of service. Woodland Elementary, along with the Veteran Spouses Project, a nonprofit who highlights stories of military life, is proud to share these stories in celebration of our local hometown heroes. Because sometimes the greatest way to honor a life of service is just to listen to it. Thank you.
My first duty station was the 3rd Infantry, the Old Guard, and basically what we did there, we are the President's Guard. So we actually had the Tomb of Unknown Soldiers, the Continental Color Guard, the United States Army Drill Team, the caisson who carries the caskets for all the burials. Back in 2003, I was the NCO of the Year, the Non-Commissioned Officer of the Year for the entire United States Army. I traveled with the Sergeant Major of the Army and the Chief of Staff of the Army for a year. Went to Afghanistan and went to Iraq with the Bob Hope USO Freedom Tour. I'm the first one in my whole family to ever go in the military. So I had no clue about the military. I was in school one day and they had a recruiter in there and they had pictures of people jumping out of airplanes and helicopters and doing all that fun stuff. So,
do you remember what your dad did after 9/11?
Yeah, he went inside of the building at the end of it and then carried bodies out. How did it change your perspective in the military?
So I was actually there a mile and a half from when the plane hit the Pentagon. So for me, I was out there actually doing riot control training that day when the plane hit, and we actually heard it. And my Sergeant Major was out there, and his wife works at the Pentagon, so he got a phone call when it happened, and he just took off running. And then all of a sudden, sirens and everything went off, cell phones were down, everything was down. And for the next month and a half, what I did, it was called Operation Noble Eagle. What I did is I actually went into the Pentagon with the ATF, the FBI, the CIA, and what we did, we cleaned up all the rubbish within the Pentagon. And we did 12-hour on, 12-hour rotations. And I remember when I would come home every night, Angie would always say, "Man, you smell like jet fuel."
Just straight jet fuel.
For me, the perspective I have, after that is that's why we joined the military, to try to keep everyone safe.
When 9/11 hit, what I remember most was not only myself, but just how patriotic it was. And you just wanted to honor your country and do the right thing for your country and help each other out, and I was very proud because what the military went through, especially where we lived, it was intense. It was a lot. I was just very proud that he signed up for something like that.
What was the coolest person you met?
coolest person I met was probably the Sergeant Major of the Army, Tilly. And he was in charge of the entire United States Army, both in the United States and the world. So he actually had been somebody that I spent quite a bit of time with, and one of the things he did in his retirement speeches, he apologized to his family a lot for missing birthdays and holidays and just all the things he missed. And at that time it really made me think about, am I ready for that? And so that's kind of one of the reasons I actually got out of the military after hearing that. But he was also one of the hardest charging people I've ever met in my life, and he put every soldier and the military in front of everything in life, and so I had the utmost respect for that as well.
What was your favorite part about Ranger School?
There was no favorite part about Ranger School.
Didn't they put this heavy backpack on you and you had to walk with it?
Rucksack, yep. I had to go walk many, many miles with a rucksack.
I got to what they call my permanent duty station, which was Fort Bragg in North Carolina, and they had phased most of my job out. So they actually sent me back to Maryland to do some more training, and I became what they refer to as a heavy wheel technician. I worked on big trucks, big equipment, big stuff like that. I was what they call support, which was most of the guys that were in the 82nd Airborne were what they call infantry guys. They were the first, boots on the ground is what we call it. They would go in and clear the area, and Dad was support, so I would come in and I would fix all the stuff that they would break. So I did that for about 4 years. Then I was in, that was in 2004, and then I got out of active duty and went into the Tennessee National Guard, where I went to Fort Eustis and in Virginia, and I became a helicopter technician. I worked on helicopters for a while.
What was your favorite part?
So Dad's favorite part in the Army would have to be some of the places that I've been to and actually go out and see things. Some of the places that I went, we didn't have, you won't get to have access to those places. I went to Egypt one time, stayed 90 days there in Egypt, and actually got to see a lot of the stuff that most people don't get to see. I was able to go to this convention in 2000 where the old soldier, the tomb of the unknown soldier, and I actually got to go in and view that and talk to those guys, which most civilians don't get to talk to those guys because it's a very private club, so to speak. I'm what they call third generation 82nd Airborne. My grandfather, my papa, was in the Army 82nd. My dad was in the 82nd Airborne, and then I was in the 82nd. So it's a 3 generation. My father was one of the guys, my grandfather was one of the guys that jumped into Normandy, and then my dad jumped into Vietnam as a 82nd, and then I did several different kind of overseas deployments.
Like you have Humvees and stuff. Air Force men would drive those out of the plane and land on the ground.
So yeah, that's called a heavy drop, and what they'll do is they'll rig up a whole bunch of parachutes on whatever they're dropping, whether it be a Humvee, a tank, whatever they could fit in an aircraft. And they would actually, before we would practice some of our jumps, we'd practice a jump once or twice a month. We would go out and jump on several different drop zones at Fort Bragg. But they would actually practice heavy drop, and it's a sight to see that big whatever, whether it be a tank, they can do tanks, they can do Humvees, water trailers, whatever they need, but it would come out the back of the plane and have these big giant parachutes.
What are the Marines?
So the Marines are the United States, quick reaction. So we're on Navy ships and we're all around the world, and within 2 or 3 days, Marines can be anywhere in the whole world. with pretty much everything they need all at once.
Why did you decide to join the Marines?
Because they're the best.
We went through a time where we dated, and then he deployed, and then there's a time where we were married, and then he deployed while we were married, and that was a little bit more difficult to go through the time being married, just not knowing. But then him coming out of it and starting a family, it just, I think, helped us to realize what was important, and that was spending time with each other.
Really just appreciation for, you know, what we have and like the things we do have in America, and that there's a reason that we have these things, and a lot of that is contributed to the military. Like, I'm a firefighter, so really appreciating people who decide to serve and help and do the things that must be done in society, and that goes unseen most of the time.
Has there ever been some instances when you thought you wanted to quit the Army?
Probably at the first couple of years I was in, because I wasn't really having, I guess, a good time.
Yeah.
Wasn't having a good time in it. But I moved to New Hampshire to marry your mother, and I got a new start with a new unit, and that's the unit I went to Iraq with, and I got to basically call them my family, and I still am friends with a lot of them today.
What is Iraq?
Okay, so U.S. went to war with Iraq, which is a country in the Middle East. We went to war with them in 2003. So 2004, my unit that I was with in New Hampshire, Army National Guard, we got called up to go overseas to do transportation missions. So my job was not to go fight, my job was to go push supplies back and forth across all of Iraq to all these Army, Marine, Air Force units that were scattered about Iraq. And as a platoon leader, my job was to lead convoys. So basically like 30 plus vehicles, all full of supplies, and some protection with gun trucks. Had to go from point A to point B, deliver supplies, and dodge bullets and dodge explosives and bombs and attacks, and then come back to our home base and do it all over again. So it was just always working, and I was there for a full year.
Were there a lot of life or death situations in the Army?
In Iraq, yes. Yeah, we had a lot of things where decisions I had to make on behalf of my platoon. Kind of, if not saying if I had not made a decision, things would have gone wrong, but I made a decision which I thought was best for us to survive. So I had to do a lot of things that I would not be doing here in America. So I had to do for our convoys. I didn't want us to stop any time, so we did a lot of times where we had to pass slow-moving convoys going into traffic. So you have a northbound lane, we were going south or something like that. So basically we were going into traffic because I didn't want to get us caught behind a slow-moving convoy, because that would slow us down and make us more susceptible to getting attacked.
7 months is not long, but I fractured my hip during training and spent 5 months in rehab, and eventually ended up getting a medical discharge. Rehab is physical rehabilitation, where they work with you to do exercises and stuff to help strengthen your body so that you can get better and go back.
Oh.
But while I was on crutches for my hip, it messed up my knee, and then I rehabbed that. And then I got shin splints so bad that my physical therapist told me if I kept running, I was going to snap my legs. And that was when they sent me home.
What type of gun did you use?
An M16.
Rocket launcher?
Put your knees up.
A bazooka?
Put your knees like this. There was a gun anchored here and here and here, and I had to wrap my feet around it, and it was drilled into the ground, and then I got to shoot the barn.
Whoa!
Yeah, but it was so big it had to be like drilled into the ground so that it didn't kick back and kill me.
Yeah.
You know, getting yelled at and having to do formations in the rain and having to run farther than I thought I could. Not so much fun.
Yeah, I can get why you didn't like that part.
Yeah.
What do you wish more people knew about serving in the military?
You know, it may not be for everyone, but it's for more people than you think. I'm a 38-year-old mother of 3, and that probably wouldn't have happened if I hadn't joined, because, you know, having been in the military made me who I am.
What was your job in the Army?
Air defense artillery. So if an enemy had a missile or enemy aircraft, I would
launch another missile at it.
Yep, that's it. It just taught me how to value being a parent. You know, not getting to be there for like a lot of things. You know, when they were little. I've got an older son. You know, I missed his first everything. So it just kind of taught me to just appreciate them. I don't get as frustrated. I'm grateful that I get to, you know, do all the things with them. It's hard on the spouses more than I guess it is the service members. You know, it was hard on my wife. You know, and it made it extra stressful for me, and it's hard on the children. You didn't get to go to the after-school programs or anything else. So, I guess for my wife, you know, it's hard for them because they take on everything. You know, they're a single mother a lot of the times. You know, my mind's off of it because, you know, I'm doing, you know, gung-ho stuff and just constant stress at work. It's hard on the families more than the service members.
I worked with fighter squadrons and different special units, and then I also worked with KC-135s here out of Knoxville and doing refueling operations. My father was a 20-year career Air Force person, and my sister was also a captain in the Air Force. She was a nurse. She was actually in during the Desert Storm. So growing up, you know, I kind of had those two, I don't want to say icons, but people to look at, and it kind of made me want to do it as I got older.
How did 9/11 make you feel after it happened, Dad?
Sad is probably the basic word to use, but I would say a lot of us had a certain amount of anger and determination that kind of stoked us, because those first few days after it happened, Daddy was pretty busy.
Have you got to travel any places, Dad?
Daddy was very, very fortunate in his career. He was able to spend most of his career overseas, which means I wasn't in America. I lived in Great Britain, I lived in Italy, I lived in Iceland. I got to spend time in Germany. As also, I took a 2-week train ride throughout Europe. I slept on the train, ate, did everything pretty much on the train. And we went around, yeah. Just like you like trains now, right? Right. So Daddy spent, you know, some time backpacking on and off the train, which was great. It was a great experience.
What was the scariest part that you ever done in the Air Force?
When I first came in the Air Force, you know, Daddy was afraid of heights. Daddy didn't like to fly, yet I chose the Air Force, right? You know why?
Why?
Because I knew it was the one way to overcome that fear. Because I wouldn't have a choice. I had to get in a plane and I had to do my job.
How high in the sky did you go in a plane?
Oh, Daddy's been over 60,000 feet. I got to ride in an F-15 and a fighter jet. Yeah, and let me tell you something, that was a brutal beating I took riding in that aircraft. I was down for 3 days after I took a ride in that aircraft. Serving your country is something that and it doesn't matter to me if you do it as a EMT, firefighter, volunteer firefighter, you know, food pantry, just giving yourself to someone else, to better something else, the greater whole, I guess. And that's important. And that's something that I want him to know, is that's why Daddy did what he did, was because he wanted to do something that was more important.
Yeah, probably 2000 is when I actually joined the military, but I signed on the military on what's called an Army HPSP scholarship because I wanted to go to dental school. So that is called the Health Professional Scholarship Program. They award it to dentists, doctors, nurses, veterinarians for professional education. You are part of the largest organization in the world, and so it is good and bad. So mostly positive because of the camaraderie with the fellow doctors you work with and the soldiers you get to work with on a daily basis. And a few months before I signed up was right around when 9/11 happened. So there was no war before that, or there hadn't been in 20-something years, and so most of the doctors that I talked to hadn't been part of any sort of war effort, whereas when I joined, that was my 10 years that I was in was all part of the war effort. So it was getting soldiers ready to go to war, to deploy, and then when they came back, cleaning up their mouths and teeth to get them ready to retrain and go in again. So it was challenging because training is hard on soldiers and they don't necessarily have the motivation to take care of their teeth when they're facing bad circumstances in bad hostile places. And so we did a lot of kind of patching things up so they could get back to the fight.
Would you be sad if you were away from your mom and dad?
Yeah. So when we were you weren't with us yet, but we were in Germany, we were a long way away. And it was definitely difficult. My wife, when your brother was born, had a really hard pregnancy, and she had to be on bed rest for a lot of the time. And Daddy was being pulled out in the field to do Army training, and so your grandmother had to come over and help Mommy when Daddy had to be doing Army stuff for a long time. So it was really hard. Daddy didn't know how he was going to manage it. Opportunities in the military were great. The way the military took care of paying for and giving me opportunities as far as paying for school for me really gave me the opportunity after I got out after 10 years to start my practice the way I wanted to start it, and gave me a lot of opportunity where I wasn't just burdened by student loan debt. So that was the biggest reason for myself staying in the military, plus just patriotism to our country and taking care of the greatest people that sacrificed so much. Was just an honor every day to just watch these guys and what they were putting up with and what they were fighting for. Oh, thanks. Love you.
You? Thank you.
You're welcome, bud. You're welcome, all right.
Daddy and Mommy have worked so hard that I think I'm really proud and very happy.
What words come to your mind when you think about it?
That he is helping our country. That's
Yeah.
exactly what every Army person does. They help the world.
I would thank you for helping us save our country and stuff.
You got it, buddy. I love you, big guy.
Love you too.